All right, good afternoon, everyone. We'll call this meeting to member of the Management Committee to order. For those around the table, please turn on your microphone when speaking. For those participating via Zoom, please state your name when making a comment or asking a question. We'll now begin the meeting with a roll call of all members.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll go down the list of members alphabetically, and please unmute and indicate if you are present. Chair Banjer.
Present.
Lori Bays as proxy for Jeffrey Barton.
Present.
Thank you. Ben Bitter.
Here.
Thank you. Scott Butler.
Present.
Thank you. Greg Caton.
Here.
Thank you. Andrew Ching.
Here.
Thank you. Ron Corbin.
Here.
Thank you. Henry Darwin.
Here.
Thank you. Crystal Dykes.
Present.
Thank you. Bruce Gardner.
Here.
Thank you. Rachel Goodwin.
Present.
Thank you. Rosa Inchausti.
Present.
Thank you. Suzanne Jones. Jeff Kulaga. Leo Liu. Vice Chair Madrano.
Present.
Thank you. Jessica Mefford Miller.
Present.
Thank you. Jennifer Jack as proxy for Brian Myers.
Present.
Thank you. Grady Miller.
Here.
Thank you. Gary Neese. Kevin Phelps.
Present.
Oh, thank you. Kevin Phelps. Thank you. Sorry. Calvin Pilcher. Jen Pekorski. Ryan Peters as proxy for John Pombier.
Present.
Thank you. Bryant Powell. Wynette Reed.
Present.
Thank you. Doug Sandstrom.
Here.
Thank you. Troy Smith.
Present.
Thank you. Brian Stutzman.
Present.
Thank you. Jennifer Toth.
Present.
Thank you. Catherine Valenzuela.
Here.
Thank you. Bruce Walls. Matthew Williams.
Present.
Thank you. Bob Wingenroth.
Here.
Thank you. Is there anyone that I missed? Mr. Chair, we have quorum.
All right, thank you. Now, please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, and before we proceed any further, I want to welcome Doug Sandstrom, the newly appointed city manager for Buckeye.
Thank you very much. Very glad to be here.
Congratulations, Doug. We're happy to have you. Okay, item number 3, call to the audience. I have one speaker who's requested to speak, Ms. Diane Barker.
Yeah. See, I'm on my tiptoes, and the reason being, and I promise you, Banner would physical therapy would approve of this. No gymnastics. Diane Barker, thank you, Chairman Barker. I'm speaking about the heat effect. I was over here today because I do the multimodal thing and parked downstairs with a little folding bicycle and was met by the security guard, wondered if I worked here. And I said that I was coming here to be a citizen and speak. He says, "Is that electric?" I looked at him and I says, "Well, I think this is the reason I'm still living. It's not electric." You know, and then he kind of laughed. And some people later, Phil McNeely, who's the head of Maricopa Pollution, said, "Sure, Diane." He says, "Is that whatever happened to when we used to ride our bicycles and it was good for health?" But in my walk over to the Board of Supervisors, this is what happened. It's amazing how a day can really shorten a person. I ran into a really nice looking man, all dressed up. And he said to me, even in my flat feet, he says, he says, are you dressed fashionable? And I says, "Well, I lost my shoes," which I says, people don't know, but I am a grad from that school. Maybe you'd love to hate us, you know, we won national champion football, Ohio State. I was a fashion retailing major, and I do try to find little bit outfits that look fashionable, you know, outside in all of this heat. That therefore I have the hat, and I typically do bring another change of shoes, but today this is what happened. So I want to talk to you about, you've heard of the American Lung Association, and they put out records and reports, and they haven't given the Phoenix Mesa area a good quality. Matter of fact, it's worse than last year, and it's an F, and it's for ozone. And I know that MAG is working to get the ozone as like an international quality, and maybe get a bit higher ranking. We're not going into serious with the EPA. We need to take responsibility because you know what? The ground level ozone is exasperated by heat, and the Phoenix, Mesa, the greater area has like nearly half of the days over 95, which is considered a high increasing ozone. So what's the remedy? I'm telling you all these. It's what MAG's been preaching for years. I've come in here before Mr. Zerker was even the director, is that multimodal. And it's not like even me saying, hey, you know, you're a culprit, you need to get out of your car. It's not that. It's like I said to Phil McNeely, and he says, make a video, Diane, of your lifestyle. I said, there's some trips that can be better on foot or transit than locked in your car.
Thank you, Ms. Barker, and go Fighting Irish. Oh, goodness. Okay, it's my understanding we had no online comments submitted, so we'll move on to item number 4, informational items. Items 4A through 4C are for information only. Does any member of the committee have any questions or request a presentation on any of these items? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Items 5A through 5I are on the consent agenda. Does any member of the committee have questions or request a presentation on any of these items? Okay, there's no questions or presentations requested. We've received one request to speak from Ms. Diane Barker. I should have saved my comment for after this speech.
You know what they say is I do have a torn rotator, so it's hard for me to do the OH, if that makes you feel better. But I say, if you don't like my right, you're not going to love my left because it's gotten stronger. Okay. I'll only take a little bit of time on this particular item because what's happening, I understand, you know, the legislature made it so that the prop monies for the new measure and everything, this money was given to MAG. You're putting a memo out to RPTA for duties of like, you know, light rail buses, which probably some of you within the cities are maybe doing some of these. You've sent representatives over to RPTA. My bottom line, and what Mr. Crawley spoke at the Board of Supervisors today, is that he really thinks that it should be bifurcated, the bus and the rail, although I really do believe in a comprehensive transportation system. And right now, when I buy a ticket on the rail and it doesn't work for me to make a transfer off of the bus. Now that's not good. We need to have integrated. We need to have actually all of these security guards that are so prompt to collect your money on the light rail. They never ever have gotten any information on, hey, you're getting off at the Thomas stop. Can we help you? You know, where the bus stop is. This is what I'm saying is customer service is, and government should be involved with it. And if you don't, get agents that are people that are helpful. They're welcoming rather than, where's your pass? And matter of fact, 2 of the farebackses on the light rail in the last week when I was going to the Ohio State game, it didn't work. And it actually took my $20 and gave me a receipt, took in 20, and it said nothing. I got back nothing. I got no card ticket that they cost $4 now, and then it should have been 10 on that. But actually, it did give me back $6. And I honestly reported it downstairs. Okay, I got my $6, but I want the rest, and I'm a senior, so I get a discount. So I'm saying we need to work on this, because actually our PTA and the light rail gets upset, according to Blue, because of these people they say are scamming and not using the. If you don't have it set up properly, it makes it really rough for people to be honest.
Thank you, Ms. Barker. Okay, it's my understanding from staff, we have no online comments submitted. So I will seek a motion to approve consent items 5A through 5I.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Vice Chairman Madrano, second by Winnett. Thank you, Winnett. All those in favor? First, we'll have those participating in the meeting online take part in the voice vote by turning on their cameras and muting their audio. Those who cannot or do not want to turn on the camera, staff will conduct a roll call vote. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room and those online? Those in favor, sign aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Okay, please leave your cameras on. Staff, can you take a roll call of the members participating virtually who did not turn on their camera?
Darcy, email, but you'll hear your microphone because it doesn't sound like it's working.
Mr. Stutzman, how do you vote?
Yes.
Thank you. And is it Calvin Pilcher? Matt Williams? All right, the motion passes.
Right, thank you. We'll move on to item number 6, and it's Air Quality Update, Clean Air Act, Section 179B. Demonstration. This item is on the agenda for action and will be presented by Matt Poppin, Director of Environmental Planning. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair and members of the Management Committee. I just want to say up front, today is kind of a milestone day for us in that we are finally able to present to you today the final results of our international emissions demonstration under Clean Air Act Section 179B. Ever since the regional or Chandler Mayor met with EPA Administrator back in March of this year, it's been a sprint for us to get this demonstration prepared for you and up to EPA as quickly as possible. So happy to go through it today. I'm going to take a little bit more time today than I normally would to kind of go through all of the technical analyses, because we're going to ask you to recommend those today. So I want to make time to make sure the committee knows what we're recommending today. So again, what's the purpose of this demonstration? As we've heard for the last couple of years, in terms of our ozone non-attainment, we're a moderate non-attainment area, and we had an attainment date of August 3rd, 2024, which has since passed. Based on the air quality monitoring data that's out there, we have a current value of 80 parts per billion, which means we exceed the EPA standard of 70 parts per billion. So we did not meet that attainment date as required. So what Clean Air Act Section 179B does, it exempts our non-attainment area from being reclassified to the next highest ozone level, which would be Sirius in this case, if we can prove that we would have attained back in August 3rd, 2024, but for emissions coming from international areas. And this is really important for the economic development of our region. This is something we've been working for and talking about for the last 2 years, as well as getting a better understanding of what we can control locally and what is outside of our control. So it's a very important milestone for us today. So what's the status of the demonstration? Again, we have completed all of the modeling and analytical work, which we're going to present to you today for your consideration. The final report is being prepared as we speak, and it will be finalized for inclusion in the agenda packet for Regional Council. And hopefully we'll have it up on our website as well, so folks can take a look at it. Normally, you also would have had the final report to review and act on, but EPA has asked us, get this up to us as quick as you can. So in order to save a month in the process, we took this through Air Committee, which recommended inclusion of these analysis. We're taking it through this committee today, and then we'll have the final report for Regional Council action so we can get it up to EPA right after that on September 24th and save them a month. The other thing that is occurring is EPA is currently under a consent decree with the Center for Biological Diversity. And under that consent decree, they have to take action on our non-attainment area status by February 3rd, 2026. So this report will allow EPA to take action and say we would have attained, but for international emissions. They're hoping to go with a proposed approval of this in November, take some time to respond to public comments, and then go final sometime in January. So again, it's really important that we get this up to EPA as soon as possible. So let me really walk through some of what the demonstration includes. And there's a lot of technical language, but I want to make it as consumable as possible. Our primary way that we show what the international impact is this process. It's a modeling process called source apportionment. Basically, we tag those international sources of emissions, and we ask the model to say, tell us how much ozone is coming from these international sources of emissions. And the model can do that. They can trace those emissions and give us the impact at each monitor in our non-attainment area. So this analysis is a modeling analysis focused on man-made international emissions and how they impact our monitors in our region. So here are the results. These are very exciting results. I'm going to walk through each line. So we have about 25 monitors within the Maricopa non-attainment area. If you average the ozone concentrations at all of those monitors, you get that value in that first column, 75 parts per billion. That's including all the international emissions. So when we run the model by excluding all international emissions, the model says your average concentration would be 60 parts per billion. So that tells us that the impact from international emissions is 15 parts per billion, which gets us well below the EPA standard of 70. We're also concerned with wildfires. We've talked about that quite a bit at this committee, and we don't think the days that have been impacted by wildfires should be included as part of this analysis. So that second line starts at what the average concentration at the monitors would be if you take out ozone exceedances impacted by wildfires. So you start at 73 again, you remove international emissions, that gets you to 57, and then that's an impact of 16 parts per billion. The last two lines, and this is what EPA compliance is based on, is your worst performing monitor. So our worst monitor in the non-attainment area has a concentration of 80. And again, you remove international emissions, that gets us down to 66 at that worst performing monitor for a total impact of 14. So this is great news. We can show attainment even without excluding wildfires, and that international emissions has had a pretty substantial impact on our non-attainment area. So the bottom line, attainment can be demonstrated in 2023 when man-made international emissions are removed. And that's what we're going to be submitting to EPA. So I want to dig into it a little bit more so folks can understand a little bit better what's happening. This graph is a daily graph of the impact of international emissions throughout our ozone season. So from the left to the right, it starts in April and goes all the way through August. And there's two categories in this graph. We have the dark orange, which is the contribution from Asia or intercontinental international emissions. So that could include Europe as well as Asia. And then the light orange is the impact from Mexico. So what this tells us is that in the early spring, in April through June, we have much more international impact from Asia and intercontinental sources. And that's mainly due to the weather patterns, right? That jet stream that carries those emissions to us, and then it carries it across the continental US. However, when we get into the monsoon season months of July and August, our weather shifts and we get much more impact from Mexico. So that's why you start to see Mexico impacts starting to dominate in July and August. One of the questions we get is, this is modeling, Matt, can we trust the results of modeling, right? This is just a computer exercise. So one of the things we do is we make sure that the model accurately replicates ozone concentrations. And if we know we can replicate ozone concentrations, then we can trust the model. So in this graph, the gray line is the observed ozone concentrations. Again, it's an average across almost 30 monitors in our region. And the red line shows our model. So this is some of the highest model performance we've achieved in a long time. It's a credit to our modeling staff. There's a tremendous amount of work that goes into it, a tremendous amount of variables to make sure our modeling is accurate. It's not perfect, but it is representative of the ozone, observed ozone concentration. So we have a high degree of credibility and trust in our modeling results. So besides that primary analysis, we do have some additional secondary analyses that we want to include as well as sort of weight of evidence for our primary analysis. The first is EPA's own modeling. So back in 2021, EPA also did a similar exercise, and they wanted to know what's the impact of international man-made emissions. And they did it for all non-attainment areas, but for our non-attainment area, they came up with a value of 8.5 parts per billion in the year 2020. Now that's their minimum estimate. They had about 5 parts per billion that they didn't know if they could assign to international or domestic emissions. So they called that mix and they just didn't include it. If you were to include that as international, it would get it pretty close to our model estimate of theirs would be 13, and it would get pretty close to our model estimate of 15. The ozone level back in 2020, including wildfires, was 79 parts per billion. So once you remove EPA's minimum estimated contribution of international emissions, of that 8.5 parts per billion, you actually get attainment just simply with EPA's own modeling. So you take that 79, you minus the 8.5, and you get 70. EPA regulations require you to truncate the decimal point. So even EPA's own modeling would show that we would attain the standard back in 2020, but for international emissions. One of the other things we looked at was we looked at each exceedance day. What is happening on the days when we go over the standard? So what our consultant did was they looked at the air pathways on every single exceedance day, and they came up with 4 dominant pathways. Where's the air coming from? And they really focused on just looking at the 3 days prior to the exceedance to focus more on the continental impacts, as opposed to we know we're getting those Asian impacts, what's happening on our own continent. And so 4 pathways emerged. We have exceedances sometimes where the air is coming from the north, and then also from the southeast, from the south, and then from the west. So 3 of those 4 pathways indicate potential transport from Mexico. Southeast, south, and west, all you can pick up Mexico emissions on those exceedance days. 2 of the 4 pathways indicate transport from Asia, intercontinental sources from the west, and then from the north as well. What we found is that 80% of the exceedance days pass over some part of Mexico. And so if you remove exceedance days impacted by wildfires and where transport from Mexico occurs, all of the monitors would attain except for one. We'd have one monitor at 71, just barely over, but this is additional evidence that even just looking at the impact of Mexico alone, not including Asia, we would pretty much attain the standard. We also looked at what's happening with Mexico emissions as well, because they're our nearest source. We're about 115 miles away from the border. And so those emissions are much more likely to have a daily impact on our non-attainment area. What we found is when we looked at the 3 northern states of Mexico and we compared it to our non-attainment area emissions from 2017 to 2023. Under that period, our NOx emissions, which is one of the pollutants that causes ozone, decreased 38% over that time period, whereas northern Mexico, their emissions increased by 6% over that same period. Mexico emissions are also 6 to 11 times greater than our emissions, even though they only have double the population. In terms of VOC, another pollutant, ours decreased slightly by 4%, and northern Mexico increased 2%. So again, we were showing a decline in emissions while Mexico emissions were increasing, which likely contributed to that sort of disconnect we see that we've talked about a lot, about rising ozone concentrations despite our own local emissions decreasing. This increase in Mexico emissions could have caused that additional ozone as well. And again, their emissions are quite a bit higher than ours, despite the fact that their population is only about double of ours. So those are the main pieces of technical information. We'll have more in our documentation. There's a lot about how we develop the model inputs in there. But really, we believe this is one of the strongest demonstrations that'll ever be submitted to EPA. So we believe that there is overwhelming technical evidence that we would have attained the standard back in August 3rd, 2024, but for the impact of man-made international emissions. So today we're going to ask you to take action on that to recommend acceptance of these modeling analyses, but I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments that the committee might have.
Thank you, Matt. Excellent work. Do any members have questions for Matt on the material presented? Okay. Prior to voting, there's an opportunity for members of the public to comment. I haven't received any requests to speak for this agenda item, nor have we received any online written comments for this agenda item. So if there's no further questions, we'll solicit a motion to recommend acceptance of the modeling analysis of the impact of international emissions on ozone concentrations in the Maricopa non-attainment area for inclusion in the Clean Air Act Section 179B, retrospective demonstration to be submitted to the EPA administrator. Do we have a motion?
I motion to approve.
Thank you, Rosa.
Second.
Second, Greg, thank you. We have a motion and a second. We will have those participating in the meeting online take part in the voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room and those online? Those in favor sign aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Okay, please leave your cameras on. Staff, can you take a roll call of the members participating virtually who did not turn on their cameras?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Everyone had their cameras on and the motion passes.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 7, draft fiscal year 2025 transit program of projects. This item is on the agenda for action and will be presented by Patrick Stone, Deputy Transportation Director. Patrick?
Thank you, Chair Manager, members of the Management Committee. Pleasure to be here today to present this item. Before I begin, a little bit of context. The program of projects, it's an annual exercise MAG does. Typically, this is heard at both the Transit Committee and Transportation Review Committee, and then typically it moves on to the consent agenda for policy committees. This cycle, we did not have a unanimous vote at Transportation Review Committee. So as our standard practice, we've moved this item from the consent agenda to be heard, but then also taking the opportunity, I've kind of enhanced the slide deck to provide some overview of transit funding in the region, which I think will really help to guide the presentation that I'm going to give you today. So transit funding in the region, it's really predicated on the census. The population count and boundaries are used to allocate funding nationwide. It's updated every 10 years as part of the decennial census. As you see on the graphic at the bottom, really the census feeds into the federal formulas that then lead into apportionments to the MAG region. FTA formula funding, it's set aside in different buckets. We have the 5307 program, which is the urbanized area program. There's funding for seniors and individuals with disabilities. We have a state of good repair set aside, as well as bus facilities. You can note it does show the population bands where that type of funding is allocated. So I want to pause here. This is the big slide. This is the important slide. So as you can see on the slide, Urban areas are used to describe areas of population greater than 50,000. Within the MAG region, we have two what are known as large urban areas. These are areas that exceed 200,000 in population. In the teal green, we have the Phoenix Mesa Scottsdale urban area. And then in the west, we have the Phoenix West Goodyear Avondale urban area. In addition, we have a new urban area that came about as part of the 2020 census. This is a small urban area exceeding 50,000 in population centered around the city of Maricopa, highlighted in the green. And what I really wanted to focus on, you can see those three urban areas. That's where we can spend transit funding in the region. Federal formula transit funding is only eligible to be used in those three regions. But we didn't want to ignore the fact that we have needs in our rural areas. The rural funding for transit in the region is covered by ADOT under both their Section 5310 and 5311 programs. So moving into the actual development of the POP, transit funding programming in the region is covered by the regional programming guidelines for federal transit formula funds. And here you see a listing of the priorities in how that funding is programmed through this process, which leads into the development of the POP, or the program of projects. It starts with MAG developing that document, the POP, and it's really triggered on the second one, which is the FTA apportionments. Typically, those apportionment notices come out sometime in the spring, can be as early as January, can be as late as May. But that apportionment notice is what triggers us to what you're seeing us do today, which is bring the POP process through for approval. If there are changes necessitated in the development of the POP, we reflect those in the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP. MAG Regional Council then approves the POP. That will be the conclusion of the journey this month. I'll note that in my schedule slide. Based on that approval, we develop a concurrence letter and we provide the draft grants to the City of Phoenix to start building out the grants. Mr. Zerker, as Executive Director, signs those concurrence letters. We then provide them to the City of Phoenix, who is the designated recipient for transit funds in the MAG region. The city then prepares the grants and submits them to FTA for formal approval. So I wanted to real quick go through the funding that's actually associated with the program of projects in this cycle for fiscal year 2025. First, we start with the FTA apportionments, highlighting the FTA formula funds. These are the ones that you saw on that prior slide, developed over those 4 buckets. Here you can see the funding allocated by both bucket and by urban area, as I showed on the slide, the largest being the Section 5307 funds for the Phoenix Mesa Scottsdale urban area. And the total is just over $109 million. In addition, we have transfers that are done, both FHWA and ADOT transfers, totaling just over $25 million. Really what you see is 2 different things here. Part of it is our federal formula funding. As part of our investment plan, we do a transfer of those funds. In addition, there's funding transferred by the state of Arizona as part of an annual $6.5 million allocation to transit. Finally, this year, kind of an anomaly, we also have a significant amount of prior year funds, just over 88 million. What this really is, it's a result of COVID. Even 5-6 years on, we're still talking about the effects. The region received a significant amount of relief funding associated with COVID that helped supplement some of those transit needs. We're now catching up with that and starting to program those on actual requests. So here's the POP process. As I noted, transit and TRC, we've already had those meetings. We are at Management Committee today on the 10th. It'll then move to the TPC next week, Regional Council later this month. Assuming successful approval by Regional Council, we anticipate submitting the grant to FTA later this fall. And with that, Chair Banjer, members of the Management Committee, happy to take any questions from yourself or other members of the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Do any members have questions or comments? Okay. Seeing none, prior to voting, there's an opportunity for members of the public to comment. Or received no request to speak for this agenda item, nor have we received any online comments. So with that, is there a motion to recommend approval of the draft fiscal year 2025 program of projects?
So moved.
Vice Chair Reyes. Second, Mr. Phelps. We have a motion and a second. Will those participating in the meeting online take part in the voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio? Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote. Can I have a voice vote? Those in the room and those online, those in favor sign aye.
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 Those opposed say nay. Okay, please leave your cameras on. Staff, can you take a roll call of the members participating virtually who did not turn on their cameras?
All members had their cameras on and the motion passes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Moving on to item number 8, a resolution of support for October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. This item is on the agenda for action and will be presented by Amy St. Peter, Director of Community Initiatives.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, for your time and support on this very important issue. The purpose of today's presentation will be to invite your participation in domestic violence awareness activities, to offer resources to support your participation, and then to take action on a draft resolution of support. This update is offered on behalf of the Community Initiatives Coordinating Committee. So these are the 2 questions in front of us today. Why domestic violence and why at MAG? According to the Arizona Coalition Against Sexual and Domestic Violence is a pattern of coercive and abusive behaviors used to gain control and power over another person in any kind of intimate or family relationship. That pattern is important. It's not just about someone losing their temper. And that relationship status is important because domestic violence is specifically perpetrated by people who are supposed to love us and supposed to protect us. This causes, of course, severe damage to the victims, and at times it even takes their lives. It destroys families, it threatens the stability and safety of communities, it increases the cost of healthcare and criminal justice, and reduces productivity at work. We know that working together is more effective than working alone, particularly when it comes to domestic violence. We've seen the power of people coming together to improve the way that we respond to domestic violence, to make it more consistent, more effective in communities as well as throughout the region. The level of coordination needed and the pervasive nature of domestic violence makes this truly a regional issue. We've partnered with you now for more than 26 years to strengthen the regional response to domestic violence. Like to share that, every year we raise awareness about domestic violence, but this year we're very specifically focusing on late life domestic violence. We're doing that because of its prevalence and in honor of the partnerships that are underway to address late life domestic violence. According to the National Council on Aging, the rates of late life domestic violence are increasing. Before the pandemic, 1 in 10 older adults experienced abuse. During the pandemic and since then, those rates have increased to 1 in 5. Cases of abuse among people of all ages often go unreported, and that's particularly true for older adults. Older adults tend to experience more isolation, making the abuse harder to see and in essence harder to address as well. And that's why we're continuing to partner with the Arizona Department of Economic Security to strengthen the statewide response to late life domestic violence through training and enhanced protocols throughout the state, thanks to a federal grant. Earlier this year, the MAG Regional Domestic Violence Council dissolved and evolved into the Community Initiatives Coordinating Committee. The committee deployed an action team leveraging the expertise of subject matter experts to help us plan the activities around this year's campaign. The resolution of support on your agenda today is one way that we're promoting awareness, and we're honoring the courage of survivors and the people working diligently to deliver safety and justice. These are just some examples of the ways that communities can all become involved in Domestic Violence Awareness Month activities. We hope that you'll consider what your community can do. We understand that many of you are already planning events, and we're here to support you. If you'd like any technical assistance, digital copies of resources, or hard copies of resources, please do let us know. Throughout the table today and throughout the room, there are copies of a safety plan and a shoe card. It's called a shoe card because often people have to hide resources and they would put it into their shoe so it wouldn't be found by their abuser. You also have pins. We hope that you'll wear those and to support awareness of domestic violence awareness activities. If you would like to download any resources, this is where you can go on the MAG website. We encourage you to visit the website. We also would love for you to send us information about the events that you're planning. Every year, there are a number of activities that your staff, your elected officials help to plan. We'd love to promote those and to raise awareness about what you're doing to keep people safe. Also, please do send us your photos of your facilities lit purple, whether that's your city hall, your police department, your water tower, whatever it is. We'd love to be able to share that information with other folks. And as well, you can share photos of you and your staff and your elected officials wearing purple. We'd like to feature this on our website so people understand the commitment that we continue to make to addressing domestic violence. That concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, I am available to answer them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. Do any members have questions or comments? Okay, seeing none prior to voting, there's an opportunity for members of the public to comment. We've received no request to speak for this item, and we have received no online comments. So moving forward, is there a motion to recommend approval of the 2025 resolution of support for October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month? Thank you, Rachel. We have a motion by Rachel,
Second.
second by Andrew. We will have those participating in the meeting online take part in the voice vote by turning on their cameras and unmuting their audio. Members, please leave your cameras on until after the roll call vote. Can I have a voice vote of those in the room and those online? Those in favor sign aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Please leave your cameras on. Staff, can you take a roll call of the members participating virtually who did not turn on their cameras?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All members have their cameras on. Motion passes.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 9, Regional Truck Parking Study and Plan Update. This item is on the agenda for information and discussion and will be presented by Brian Rubin, Principal Planner. Brian?
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Chair, members of Management Committee. It's a pleasure to be here today to provide an update on MAG's Regional Truck Parking Study and Plan. To begin, I'd like to give a little background on this project and how we came to be where we are today. The MAG region serves as a vital trade and destination hub. Our strategic location, along with increasing economic activity, have led to a high truck parking demand, which is continuing to grow. Federal and state requirements, such as Jason's Law and Arizona Revised Statute 28-6352, direct MAG to consider truck parking availability when considering the construction, expansion, or modification of freeways or other routes in the state highway system. In addition to freight for local needs and goods distributed throughout the region, MAG's geographic location also attracts truck drivers who are merely passing through on their way to other states. Specifically, the distance to the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach make the MAG region an attractive location for overnight stops for truck drivers who are approaching their daily hours of service limits. Recently completed truck plans in the region have highlighted that the existing parking infrastructure is insufficient for current and forecasted needs, and identified that inadequate truck parking is a major issue affecting the safety and efficiency of freight movement in Arizona. This study looks to build upon previous work with an intentional focus on addressing issues with undesignated truck parking. To help guide the project, we reached out to all of our member agencies to solicit participation in our technical advisory group. This group's role was to attend meetings and workshops, to provide local input on project activities, and as well as reviewing draft deliverables. As you can see on the screen, the project kicked off in July of 2024. We're currently on track to be completed in late 2025. The strategies and case study memo from Task Force is currently under review, with the recommendations and implementation plan still to come. I will be back in front of this committee again in early 2026 to present on the final findings and recommendations. Next, I'd like to briefly discuss the current needs that have been identified as a part of this study. In order to measure parking demand, we looked at 2 different types of common parking. We evaluated supply and demand at 37 designated truck parking facilities, and we also evaluated undesignated demand, meaning those vehicles parked on neighborhood streets, on the shoulder of city or state roads or other right-of-way, and other areas that explicitly do not allow truck parking. After this evaluation, addressing undesignated parking became our primary focus. Undesignated truck parking is the type of parking that most visibly affects our communities. These are the types of trucks that are noticeably parked where they shouldn't be. To assess undesignated truck parking levels, we completed an analysis that calculated daily hours of undesignated parking by census tract. We also analyzed the number and location of crashes involving truck parks over the past 5 years to identify the areas where they most commonly occurred. Together, we identified 11 truck parking zones, which we chose to focus on. As you can see on the map showed on the screen, these areas were primarily around Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport, downtown Phoenix, and along the I-10 and I-17 corridors. We solicited feedback from truck parkers out on the road. We posted the flyer shown on the screen at numerous locations around the valley, And we also set up a public engagement site where people could make comments and tie them to specific locations through an interactive mapping portal. We also completed in-person engagement on the mornings of December 15th and 17th of 2024. We were out in the field between 5 a.m. and noon on those mornings, engaging with truck drivers who were parked, staging, or doing maintenance on their vehicles. We discussed the upcoming project with them and pointed drivers to take the survey that I mentioned previously. On the screen, you can see some of the feedback that we got from our drivers over those 2 days. Additionally, we interviewed 8 different MAG member agencies to discuss truck parking issues in their communities. When asked which strategies would be most effective, member agency representatives noted the need for more parking spaces in some areas, along with the need for supportive policies. We also conducted interviews with private parking providers, conducted in-person engagement at the Arizona Trucking Association, and met with and surveyed several active truck drivers. Finally, I'd like to briefly touch on our next steps. With our strategies, we have consolidated down to 3 final focus areas. Those are physical infrastructure, digital infrastructure, and enforcement and regulatory solutions. Apologies. Chair, members of Management Committee, this completes my presentation. I would like to take a moment to mention that as a part of this study, we'll be holding a truck parking workshop here at MAG in late October of this year. We'll be inviting all of our member agencies to participate along with private sector truck parking providers, shippers, and receivers to discuss opportunities and constraints to providing truck parking and to explore opportunities for collaboration in the region. This was on your agenda for information and discussion only today. As I mentioned previously, I'll be back next year to provide the completed report for its findings for acceptance. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time. Thanks.
Thank you, Brian. Do any members have questions for Brian?
Mr. Chair, I want to just add to Brian's report. So one, there are resources that were designated by the state legislature in Prop 479 that was passed by the voters. We're obligated to spend $90 million on truck parking in the life of Prop 479. So there are some resources. That's probably not the biggest issue. The biggest issue is what your neighbors in your communities experience. So if this is new to you, or if your city wasn't one of those that was part of the technical group, and you want your folks to start tuning into this now, this is the time. That's why we had Brian come today. Have them contact Brian directly. He'd love to hear from them. If this is an issue that's risen to your awareness since this started, or you weren't aware of it, or you just want to get more information, or you want your staff to dig in, Brian's your guy.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Any other questions for Brian? Okay, thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 10, Executive Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Very quickly today, a couple things. First, we want to congratulate a Management Committee member and ADOT Director Jennifer Toth. She was recently given a national award by the Institute for Transportation Engineers, the Theodore M. Matson Memorial Award. As we all know, Director Toth has had a distinguished career here in Arizona. She was state engineer in 2011 and then served in MacDOT and was confirmed as ADOT's director 2 years ago. She received this in Orlando last month, August in Orlando. That's okay. But we join engineers across the country in recognizing the outstanding contributions and career of our colleague, Jennifer Toth. Let's give her. She was online today. The other thing I'd say is this is a historic day at MAG because for the first time in 28 years, you are sitting on a new chair. I want to commend our IT folks who redid this room over the summer. So probably the more dramatic things are we have a new screen, new sound equipment, but the 28-year-old chairs have gone on to their greater reward. And we'll start this. So 28 years from now, we'll replace these. But I do want to commend our IT team for the work they did, Tyler and the whole crew. They had a good time this summer upgrading this room. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's my report.
Thank you, Ed. We will be sure and make note of the new chairs on your annual evaluation.
It could be a mix. Some might give me a thumbs up. Some might give me a thumbs down. So.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, we have no legislative update today, so we'll move to item 12, requests for future agenda items. Do we have any requests for future agenda items? All right, we'll move on to 13, comments from the committee. All right, seeing none, we will adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Great job, Mr. Chair. Here's all.